afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Lyrics.That.Matter podcast, the podcast where we talk about different albums and their songs and how they contribute to the world. Uh, in our last video, we talked about Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers by Kendrick Lamar, but we only talked about the first disc. The next disc is coming. Well, not the next disc. Well, the next week we're going to be talking about the second disc, which includes a new list of songs. But yeah, right now we're going to be talking about, well, not right now, but this episode, we're going to be talking about Me Against the World by famous American rapper Tupac Shakur. Now, just some background info. Me Against the World is the third studio album by Tupac, and it was released on March 14th in 1995 by Interscope Records and Out the Gutter Records, and it's distributed by Atlantic Records. Tupac draws lyrical inspiration from his impending prison sentence, his troubles with the police, as well as poverty. Now, according to Tupac, Me Against the World was made to show the hip hop audience his respect for the art form. He intentionally tried to make the album more personal and reflective than his previous efforts, and he also was considered by several music critics to be the best of any of his albums up to that point in his career. Uh, while Tupac was imprisoned, this album was released, and Me Against the World created an immediate impact on the charts, debuting at number one in the Billboard 200, which just sets the expectations for what we're going to listen to today. So, I hope you guys have Spotify or YouTube on because we're going to be listening to Me Against the World right now. And the first song that we're going to be listening to is the song named after the album, Me Against the World, feat Dramacidal. Dramacidal? Yeah, it's Dramacidal. Yeah. Let's listen to it in three, two, one. Something very common in different rap songs is the extremely simple and minimalistic beat, and this shows emphasis and it highlights the lyrics as putting it as the vocal point of uh, of the song. So, Me Against the World, honestly, this is definitely one of Tupac's most defining songs, and it's layered with deep lyricism, personal vulnerability, as well as some social commentary. As my opinion on it, well, it's not the start of the album, as there are different songs, such as Intro and If I Die Tonight, which you can easily, like, well, not easily, one of the two can be considered the opening to the album. Well, one of them is called Intro, but the opening song as well. Not the intro, of course. It's the actual song. But yeah, Me Against the World, minimalistic beat. The way Tupac flows as the beat goes on is incredible. And yeah, I have nothing else to say. So let's just go into Me Against the World. So for authorial choices, Tupac uses a range of artistic and literary techniques. He uses this to portray isolation and struggle. So first, there's the personal narration, and it feels autobiographical. The song feels like an intimate diary entry where Tupac places himself as the protagonist in a constant battle with society. One of the lyrics he mentioned was, "Can you picture my prophecy stressed in the city? The cops is hot for me." And this immediately pulls the listener into his paranoia and his lived reality of being pursued by law enforcement and society. Next is the imagery of struggle. Tupac uses images of violence, death, and betrayal to communicate the weight he carries. I wake up screaming in my sleep, seeing sirens, and this creates a haunting picture of trauma and psychological toll, or even PTSD. Next is the tone and delivery. Tupac raps with a wary, pained, and but determined voice. Unlike his more aggressive tracks, this one blends melancholy with resilience, and this shows vulnerability that's rarely shared in 90s gangster rap. And finally, there's the contrast, which I can identify as hope and hopelessness. While the verse focuses on suffering, the hook adds an almost uplifting affirmation. It's just me against the world, baby. This refrain is both a cry of isolation and a proud declaration of endurance and independence. So, what's some global significance that we can see from this song? Me Against the World is more than just Tupac's personal diary. It resonates globally because it captures the universal struggle of oppression, loneliness, as well as survival. First, there's the message of resilience. Tupac shows that even when society is against you, you can still find the strength within yourself. And this speaks to marginalized groups worldwide. This speaks to marginalized groups worldwide that are facing discrimination as well as systemic injustice. Then there's, finally, there's the confrontation of mental health and vulnerability. In culture, especially 90s rap, that often prioritized toughness. Tupac normalized expressing pain, fear, and depression. And I quote, with all this sex disturbing, I wonder if my tears full. Would anybody care? This humanizes him and opens up space for conversations about mental health, especially in communities where it's stigmatized. I think that was an interesting song to start off the album with. Now we're going to listen to the next song, which is So Many Tears. Well, after listening to So Many Tears, my opinion, let's just get straight into it. It really shows his delivery, his ability to deliver his lyrics in this song. And although I did like the intro part and the few minutes to come, the ending was it was kind of lackluster, but that's what to expect from a rap album like this. So let's just get into the authorial choices. First is the tone and delivery. Tupac raps with a very raw and mournful tone, and this matches the emotional weight of the lyrics. His voice cracks with intensity at points, and this emphasizes the depth of his pain. This performance choice turns the song not from just storytelling into a lived experience, and this makes the listeners feel the trauma that he narrates. Next is the imagery and symbolism. I have two quotes here. First is, I've been trapped since birth, cautious because I'm cursed, and fantasies of my family in a hearse. The metaphor of being cursed since birth shows that Tupac frames his environment and systemic oppression as a cycle that he's unable to escape. And the image of his family in a hearse symbolizes the generational trauma and the constant fear of loss. I see death around the corner is another quote. A recurring motive throughout Tupac's work. It's both literal, living in gang violence, and metaphorical, because a life always because his life is always at risk because of poverty, racism, and crime. Next is the juxtaposition of hardness and vulnerability. Tupac balances moments of toughness with vulnerability. I have two other quotes here. Back in elementary, I thrived on misery. Left me alone. I grew up amongst a dying breed. And this shows resilience, but also abandonment. And the chorus, Lord, I've lost so many peers, functions almost like a prayer, contrasting the aggression of the verses with a cry for healing. And finally, the production choice is he sampled Stevie Wonder's That Girl, but he twists it into something darker, creating a more haunting and melancholic soundscape. And this eerie and looping flute mirrors Tupac's themes of paranoia as well as lost. So I have a few other global significance examples here. First is the cost of violence. Tupac addresses how systemic violence robs entire generations of their youth. I lost so many peers and shed so many tears. And globally, this resonates with communities suffering from war and gang violence. And the song becomes a mourning anthem for these oppressed groups everywhere. Then there's the cycle of trauma. I know it seems heaven sent, we ain't ready to see a black president. Tupac links his personal suffering to racial inequality in America, which mirrors struggle across the world where marginalized communities feel politically excluded. And finally, there's the call for empathy. By showing vulnerability in a genre often dominated by bravado, Tupac encourages men, especially young men in violent environments, to express emotions instead of bottling them. This is globally relevant in cultures where toxic masculinity prevents men from processing grief. This is another recurring theme that we see in a lot of rappers, especially the 3 to 4 past episodes. Yeah. now we're going to go on to the next song, which is Temptations. And Temptations focuses on desire, weakness, and the struggles of staying true while surrounded by vice. Let's get straight into it. This is definitely one of the catchier songs in Tupac's album "Me Against the World," especially since there's a singing, right? Well, if you can call it singing, but it's rather a catchy chorus, and that's basically my opinion part of the album because "Temptations" is one of the standout tracks in "Me Against the World" because it mixes Tupac's charisma with deeper commentary on human weakness. So let's break it down. First, the authorial choices. So, tone and delivery. And unlike the darker songs that we've covered before, like So Many Tears, he uses a playful and confident delivery, and it almost feels flirtatious. But beneath the surface, his words still expose vulnerability. I know you've been searching for someone to make you happy and get the job done. And this duality, being playful yet revealing, shows how Tupac uses tone to both entertain and highlight the universal pull of temptation. Next is imagery of desire. Tupac vividly describes the allure of physical temptation, framing it almost like a trap. Temptation is so strong, it makes a man do wrong. The repetition of temptations as a force personifies it, suggesting that temptation is not just personal, but a universal struggle, something bigger than him. Then, finally, there's the contrast between love and lust. Tupac blurs the line between genuine connection and fleeting attraction. In the song's chorus, with its catchy rhythm and smooth vibe, yeah, contrasts with his lyrics about succumbing to physical desires instead of meaningful bonds. And this reflects Tupac's struggle with morality, as well as love and self-control. Uh, there's two things that I can identify here that I can consider as global significance. First is the highlighting of human weakness. The song exposes how temptation, whether it be lust, greed, or indulgence, is something everyone faces. And this resonates globally because it's not just Tupac's story, it's the human condition. And by acknowledging these flaws, the song encourages reflection and honesty about our own battles. Next, there's the commentary on relationships in modern society. Back shows how desire often overshadows deeper emotional needs, a theme that's still relevant in today's world that's dominated by superficial connections and instant gratification. The message is if we continue prioritizing momentary pleasures over meaningful relationships, we risk emotional emptiness. So, in conclusion, So Many Tears was Pac's song about trauma and pain, but Temptations is about the everyday struggles of desire. Tupac's authorial choices of using playful tones and catchy rhythms make the subject accessible, while the global message warns against letting temptation dictate our lives. The next song that we're going to be talking about is. Oh. Uh, well, it's the song after Temptations, directly after Temptations, that I'm not allowed to say. So, yeah. Uh, Even though words are just words in English, I'm still not gonna say this word. So, uh, yeah, after Temptations, it's this song. So let's just get straight into it. This was a very long track, and honestly, it definitely confused me the most. Let me just check. Yeah. It has 11 million plays, which is one of the lowest in the album. Oh, it is this. Oh wait, no, it's the third lowest in the album. Uh, I'm not gonna say I see why, but yeah, it's pretty confusing. But let's just look into it. So first, the authorial choices. Oh, and I forgot to mention that this song is one of the most important songs in Tupac's "Me Against the World" because it functions as both a warning and an encouragement to younger generation. So let's go into it. First, the narrative perspective. Tupac adopts the voice of an older brother, someone who's seen pain, jail, death, and violence, and he addresses the young men directly, offering advice but also acknowledging the temptations that surround them. An example quote is "Why you N words trippin'? You gotta learn to hold your own." And by speaking in second person, He makes the message intimate and instructional, pulling young listeners into a conversation. First, there's juxtaposition. Well, not first. Second, there's juxtaposition of harsh reality and hope. He doesn't sugarcoat the struggle, but he also balances brutal honesty with encouragement. An example is "You ain't gotta be a gangster." Sorry, saying obvious, really weird. You ain't got to be a gangster. Hustle in the street. Learn to stand on your own 2 feet. Tupac shows that survival doesn't have to come through crime, making a deliberate choice to challenge toxic masculinity and gang culture. Finally, there's the tone. It's cautionary, but it's also empathetic. And unlike other tracks that are angrier, here his tone is reflective and compassionate. He positions himself as a flawed role model who doesn't want others to repeat his mistakes. For example, to all my young N-words, I'm a young N-word too, but remember that it's a war we're going through. And this choice shows humility as well as humanity. He admits he's still young himself, but still feels a responsibility to guide. Why did I say that so weirdly? Then there's the global significance. of there's the breaking cycles of violence aspect because the song emphasizes the danger of glorifying gang life. This resonates globally in communities where youth are trapped in cycles of poverty and violence. And then the message: the world needs mentorship, guidance, and alternative paths for young people. And this song models that. Next is generational responsibility. Tupac stresses that older generations must warn the next about mistakes. Today, this has global significance in terms of education, mentorship programs, and cross generational conversations about crime, drugs, and systemic injustice. The final quote from the song is: "Teach your kids how to survive from the day they're born." This lyric promotes family as well as responsibility. The next song that we're going to be listening to is, I'm pretty sure it's Heavy in the Game. So let's listen. Uh, I wish I understood some parts of the song, but uh, there were songs where a Jamaican accent was used. And while I did look at the lyrics, it was still difficult to interpret. But yeah, let's just get into it. Heavy in the Game. Uh, First is the narrative, voice, and perspective. Tupac writes from the perspective of someone who's deeply entrenched in street life. He exposes the constant dangers and pressures by speaking in the first person, and he adds authenticity and immediacy to his words. Next is metaphorical language. The title Heavy in the Game itself is metaphorical, because it suggests both weight and immersion. Weight as in burden and seriousness, and immersion being fully involved in the street world. Next is the juxtaposition. He contrasts the allure of wealth and woman with the dangers of betrayal, prison, and death, showing how the same environment provides both temptation and destruction. And finally, there's the musical production. It leans on a somber beat layered with funk inspired bass lines, and this contrast of smoothness with dark lyrical content creates tension between appearance, aka glamour of the game, and reality, which is pain and paranoia. Here's some verses that and what I can interpret it with. Why explain the game? N words ain't listening, stuck in positions if victims can't stand the heat. Tupac critiques how young men repeat cycles of violence despite warnings. His diction, stuck, victims, frames them as trapped by systemic forces and not just personal choice. This shows his awareness of social determinism. Poverty and oppression push individuals towards crime. Next, Hennessy and weed to relieve the pain. Here he uses the substance references as symbols of self medication, and this authorial choice reflects the ways communities cope with trauma and lack of institutional support. Finally, is "And now I'm marked for death." Blunted, my brain is stressed. Tupac's use of vivid imagery, aka marked for death, personifies the inevitability of violence in this street game. The alliteration in blunted, brain stressed enhances the urgency of his paranoia. So, the main message you can get is, of course, the emphasis on cycles of violence and poverty. The song sheds light on how marginalized communities are caught in systemic cycles: poverty, and violence, and incarceration. By narrating, By narrating these struggles, Tupac forces listeners to globally acknowledge how structural inequality perpetuates crime. Next, we're going to be talking about the next. Well, we're going to be talking about the next song. After Heavy in the Game, it's Lord Knows. Uh, I don't really have my opinion on this song. It's just, it's similar to the others where like Heavy in the Game, and Young N words. It doesn't really have anything special to come out of it, but it does hold some deeply. Well, what I mean special is that I'm a very music oriented listener. I mean, of course, lyrics do matter, and the way that Tupac, the way Tupac expresses his feelings through the rap genre is truly inspiring, and it brings out hope. But I'm more of the music listener. I'm more of an aestheticist, just listening for art's sake because it sounds good. But yeah, let's just go straight into the authorial choices. First is the religious imagery and biblical allusions. Tupac uses prayer-like language and references to God throughout the song. Even the name is has the Lord's name. Lord knows. Uh, this shows his desperation for salvation while surrounded by sin and violence. Example: I smoke a blunt to take the pain out, and if I wasn't high, I'd probably try to blow my brains out. He opens with an immediate contradiction, searching for escape through drugs, but also acknowledging suicidal thoughts, framing the entire song as a prayer for survival. Next is the contrast between sin and redemption. He often juxtaposes his own failings with his longing for forgiveness. For example, Lord knows I tried, been a witness to homicide, drive-bys taking lives, little kids die. And the raw recount of violence in his community contrasts with his repeated cry for understanding from God. Next is the repetition of the phrase Lord knows. This almost functions like a chorus or a mantra, and this emphasizes Tupac's vulnerability, and creates a pleading tone, positioning God as both judge and confessor. Finally, the confessional style and first person narrative, because the song feels like a diary entry or testimony. Tupac strips away bravado, Tupac strips away bravado, giving listeners an unfiltered look at his inner conflict. Finally, there's the global significance. Lord Knows speaks beyond Tupac's personal life because it's a message that resonates globally as it touches on universal human struggle: violence, guilt, faith, and the search for redemption. First, there's the violence. Oh no, there's the impact of violence on communities. They got me fiending for my cash like a fiend when he dreams of drugs. Violence and greed are not only individual struggles, but systemic issues that destroy communities worldwide. And the song raises awareness of how cycles of crime are linked to survival in marginalized societies. Second, there's the struggles with mental health and despair. I smoked a blunt to take the pain out, and if I wasn't high, I'd probably try to blow my brains out. Tupac openly discusses ideation, suicidal ideas, and self-medication. Globally, this brings attention to how trauma, poverty, and violence can push individuals to the edge. It destigmatizes conversations about mental health, especially in communities where it's often ignored. Finally, there's the faith as a source of hope. Forgive me, Lord, I'm not perfect, but I'm worth it. The line expresses the universal human desire for forgiveness and recognition of worth. It's a message of resilience. Even flawed individuals can strive for redemption. For a global audience, this emphasizes empathy and understanding over judgment. In summary, Lord Knows is both personal prayer and global commentary, and through Tupac's confessional storytelling, biblical imagery, and vulnerable expression, Tupac communicates the destructive impact of violence, the reality of mental health struggle, and the universal hope for redemption. Now we're going to go on to the last song of today's episode. Not the last song of the album, but the last song of today's episode, which is also the most popular song from Me Against the World, which is Dear Mama. Let's get into it. Dear Mama is one of Tupac's most powerful and heartfelt tracks because it blends personal storytelling, emotional vulnerability, and cultural commentary as well. I'm not going to give my opinion on this track because I feel like it'll just ruin the it'll ruin the vibe of this amazing song. But let's just get straight into it. First, there's the autobiographical storytelling. Tupac narrates his life directly, grounding the song in his lived experience as he recalls poverty, struggle, and the sacrifices his mother made. For example, when I was young, me and my mama had beef. 17 years old, kicked out on the streets. Beef, if you guys did not know, is a mutual hate relationship. Just two opposing parties try to explain the obvious, so difficult. But anyway, this shows honesty and portraying their strained relationship, and this makes the song deeply relatable. Next is the tone shift, aka conflict equals to gratitude. He starts by acknowledging the conflict, but the narrative builds towards appreciation and love. This arc creates emotional depth. Ain't a woman alive that could take my mama's place. Next is the imagery of poverty and struggle. Tupac paints vivid pictures of hardship. Suspended from school, scared to go home. I was a fool with the big boys breaking all the rules. These lines reflect the harsh environment he grew up in and how his mother remained his foundation despite adversity. Next is the juxtaposition of pain and love. And by contrasting his mother's struggles with his admiration, Tupac elevates her strength. Even as a crack fiend, Mama, you always was a black queen, Mama. This juxtaposition highlights resilience, forgiveness, and unconditional love. Dear Mama carries a universal message of respect, gratitude, and acknowledgement of maternal sacrifice. First, it breaks the stigmas. The song openly discusses poverty, single motherhood, and substance abuse without shame. By doing so, it destigmatizes these experiences and shows that they don't erase dignity or love. Next is healing and forgiveness. Tupac models reconciliation and forgiveness, teaching listeners the importance of empathy towards a parent who may have struggled but still gained love. Next, the empowerment of women. By calling his mother a black queen, Tupac elevates women, especially mothers in marginalized communities, highlighting their central role in survival and resilience. And finally, there's the cross cultural reference. Although written from a specific African American experience, this song resonates globally. Almost everyone can relate to the theme of a mother's sacrifice, as it encourages gratitude and family unity across culture and social lines. Inspires This song inspires listeners to appreciate parents or guardians and repair fractured family bonds. It provides visibility to the struggles of single mothers, validating their experiences. It encourages the breaking of cycles of judgment, showing how love can exist even amid poverty and hardship. And it promotes empathy across society by humanizing marginalized families. Me Against the World, 1995, is one of Tupac's most introspective and socially conscious albums. It blends social commentary and raw emotion. Unlike some of his later and more aggressive works, this album reveals Tupac's sensitivity, fear, and longing for peace. Tupac consistently highlights the systemic oppression faced by black youth, and Tupac doesn't glorify violence. He presents it as tragic and inevitable in circumstances. Additionally, he talks about love, respect, family, faith, faith, morality, and mortality, and he discusses how life in marginalized communities is filled with pain, injustice, and violence, but also love, resilience, and wisdom. It teaches the world to listen to the oppressed, to understand cycles of poverty and crime as systemic, not individual failures. Me Against the World is not just about Tupac's struggle, it's about the universal human condition under oppression. It calls for empathy, reform, and a recognition of shared humanity. So, that's it for today's episode of Lyrics That Matter. If I were to give this song a rating from the narrative perspective and the analysis perspective, I'd give this a 7.5 or an 8 because it was rich with text. It was text. It was The lyrics were rich, the themes were clearly presented. Um, but yeah, if I were to put any of these songs in a playlist, I would not. I would not. I'd rate this a 5.5 or 6 personally. But yeah, uh, that's it for today's episode. Watch out for next week's episode because I'm going to be talking about Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, the second disc. Goodbye, everyone, and remember, lyrics matter. See ya.